We are going to maybe talk from the particular thing that we were talking about last night, that we must remember in this particular quest that you and I are on, that everything that we are, it is God-made and God-created. Everything that you and I see is God-made and God-created. And therefore, there is nothing made that was not made by God. And since God is love, everything, regardless of how it looks to us, regardless of how it looks to us, God has made it out of himself, which is love. And in its final development, it will become that which God has intended for it to become. I think as you and I go along, we are going to find that as we said last night, that the unlovable people that you and I know will become lovable. That the ugly will become beautiful, because beauty is not always on the outer. We find that thing that is of God is beautiful, and no thing has been able to mar it so far. All of this tells us that this great God whom you and I are questing after, and are questing for more of him, the more that he gives of himself to us, it tends to intensify, make large this great love that we have for him. And inasmuch as we have it for him, we have it for each other. I'm not concerned about just love, Sometimes you can say that word and it just doesn't mean anything, But I mean something that, although I may not tell you, but you know it anyhow. A love that comes from the inside. And even when you talk to your friends and you leave your friends, why, you could say that you have been in the presence of someone who loves. Because somehow or another, through the process of osmosis or pollination, why, some of it is rubbed off on you, So in this whole thing, I think enough of this love develops into what you and I need in this day and time, and I think what the whole Christian church needs is spiritual ruggedness. Spiritual ruggedness. I think that there are our spiritual muscles, our spiritual beings must become strong. Because you and I know at the present time that in the time in which you and I live now, weak Christians do not have much influence as far as turning the tide the way that you would like to have it and the way that God would like to have it. And it's only an intensified Christianity, a Christianity that is filled with love. Because, yes, it seems to me that at one time that one of the distinguishing factors of the disciples was how they loved each other. How they loved each other. Well, what causes a man to love another person now? We're not talking about, anything that you and I experienced when we were young people, girl, boy, but something a little greater than that. And the thing that brought it out in my own experience, in my own life, was that when I asked God for a revelation of himself as far as I was concerned, that's what I wanted. All right, God, I'm an individual here on earth, and I am created in your own image and after your likeness, and yet everything around me seems to tell me I'm not. Even the conditions under which I live, it says that I'm not. And I long for that. And so when I began to pour out my heart to him and ask him for that relationship, and that was a kind of a one prayer thing, a one desire. This I desire, to know my relationship with you and your relationship with me. If I am part and parcel of you, if I am spirit of your spirit and mind of your mind, and life of your life, I want to know. And that was a deep desire. And our deep desires will come to fruition if we'll ask, as has already been said, and if we'll wait. And it wasn't, I don't think God let you wait so long when you desire to know him. I don't think he will put many blocks in your way. He won't put any blocks in your way, by the way. If you desire to know him. And in your quietness, in your quiet time, you will find that you can come to the place where you know that every part of your being is part and parcel, warp and woof, of the God who created you. And if you think that is not a discovery, why, you try it, if you haven't already tried it. And after that experience, you will know for truth. You will know it. No one can take it from you. Yeah. And this great love that you ought to, shall I say inherit? This great love that is yours for the asking, maybe that's a better term, I don't know, gives you, I think, that spiritual ruggedness that you and I today will stand up as Christians and let this light shine in the face of criticism and ridicule and whatnot. Otherwise, suppose each Christian determined within himself that I'm going to hold my corner, or I'm going to let my light shine individually, each one of us. Sometimes it's good for us to do things in a mass or collectively. But to me, the secret of power would be where two or three, me, individual, you asking for something and receiving, and so forth and so on. Then when we come together, then we pray collectively, and much will be done. But I think it's to the individual Christian that he decide this for himself. For instance, you remember this story in the Bible, and I like to tell it in my own way, where that there are these 4 men, you remember, that brought this paralytic to Jesus. I don't know whether you've ever thought too much about it. Or what it took, what kind of courage it took. And I would say what kind of spiritual ruggedness it took for those men to do what they did. You remember what they did? It seemed like that was a friend of theirs, and some of the commentaries and whatnot, they said that this man was a rabbi in that town, and he was sick. And these 4 men went down and got him on this pallet. And of course, when I saw pallet in this revised version, why, it struck home to me because I knew what a pallet was. Because when 7 of us kids were at home, why, there weren't enough beds sometime, and we had to, my mother would make a pallet on the floor. Sometimes she'd make it out of different things, a lot of quilts, which she had quilted with her own hand, and she'd make it soft somehow or another, and us kids would lay right on the floor, and they called it a pallet. And, of course, I don't know how this one was made, but I have an idea what a pallet was. Anyhow, it was something that people laid on or slept on and so forth. And so these men went and got this man who was a paralytic. And I don't know, and they brought him to this place. And seeing that there was quite a job along, I think one of them brought along his hatchet, you know. And they couldn't get in at the door because of the crowd. And so one of them, as it said, that they made a way through the roof. I don't know how the roofs are made. Maybe they're not made with skylights. But I would like to say that these men were so interested in bringing their friend to Jesus that they cut a hole in the top of somebody else's house to bring a man to Jesus. Cut a hole in the top of somebody else's house. Suppose you did that, huh? Regardless of the criticism, or maybe they would put them in jail, or maybe they would sue them. But these men were so determined. They had such spiritual ruggedness until they were willing to take the blame, the punishment, if need be, in order to bring this man to Jesus. But, you know, as I visualize them going up these steps on the side, you know, and coming up on the roof, I thought it was quite a task for them to get up there, 4 men, one on each corner, going up those, maybe, it might have been rickety stairs, you know, and uneven. And you can see what a terrible burden that was. But in my own imagination, in my own vision, I think as they went up there and the load got heavy and it seemed like they would come down a little bit, we would hear one say to the other, "Hold your corner, hold your corner." And then they would go up another step. And it seemed like maybe they would slip back again. Another one would say, "Hold your corner, hold your corner." Until finally they got the man up on top. And they let this man down through the roof, down at the feet of Jesus. Because 4 men had held their corner. 4 men who were not afraid of criticism. Four men who loved God so much and who loved their fellow man so much. You see, they go together. When you love God, you automatically become to love your fellow man. That's one of the signs to me. It's one of the badges of awareness. Love God, love your fellow man. And because of that love for God and of God, they risk the punishment or whatever would come to them and let him down at the feet of Jesus. And when Jesus saw their faith and said, "My son, thy sins are forgiven thee." If he was a preacher, that was quite an astounding thing there, wasn't it? Oh, did you hear? You know, I imagine you could, if you had listened real close, you'd have heard the gossip going around the crowd. Did you hear what Jesus said about our preacher? He said, his sins. Well, I didn't know he sinned. You see? Oh, what do you know about that? Our preacher. I have an idea what they'd say about me, you know, at my church, you know. Say, "Oh, I told you so, I told you so." You hear what Jesus said about old Bernie? He said, old Bernie's sins forgiven him. Uh-huh. I didn't know he sins, but his sins found him out. You see? What shall I say then? Maybe there is a... No, not that. Otherwise, in your spiritual growth and development, you know, sometimes we think that we are going to get to that place where everything is going to be hunky-dory, you know. That we will never, we won't have any hill to climb or any valleys to go through or any difficult places, that we will get to that place where it's nice and comfortable and soft. But if you will examine your whole Christian life and your career as a Christian, you will find that there are changes in your life that come from time to time, regardless of how you would like for it to be. Life automatically pushes you on. And sometimes we go very stubbornly because very often we do not like to move out of the place where he would, we are, the comfortable place. So it was in this case that these men, and each one doing his part, holding his part of the corner, these men with this spiritual ruggedness, that they did not mind what the criticism would be. They did not mind the ridicule. They did not mind whatever the penalty would be for, I would say, cutting a hole in somebody else's roof. But they loved God so much. And they loved their fellow man so much that they knew it was worth it. You know, that's great love, isn't it? You know, and when anyone really discovers God and really, really discovers him, he wants to fuse himself in with that he loves, so much that he would like to become a part of that, a part of God, because of the love that he has for God. And that love for God that he has intensifies his love so that he wants to draw others into that particular circle. putting them down at the feet of Jesus. I wonder what that man thought. There he was, sick, a paralytic. And when he looked into the eyes of Jesus, and Jesus said, "My son, thy sins are forgiven thee." Yeah. But you remember that between the time that Jesus said, "Thy sins be forgiven thee," there was some conversation going on. Did you hear what he said? Thy sins are forgiven. Who does he think he is to forgive sins? Why, no one can forgive sins but God. But it said Jesus knew the murmurings and the grumblings of their heart. They didn't say this out loud. They were whispering it to each other. The physical ear of Jesus couldn't have heard it. But I imagine Jesus just stepped over into the one mind. And he knew everything was going on, even their thinking. He knew what they were thinking about, because it said they were thinking these things in their hearts. And Jesus stepped into that circle and he said, "I know what you're talking about. Well, which is easier for me, to tell him to rise, take up his bed and walk, or tell him his sins are forgiven thee?" And they marveled. Then after he had stepped into that divine mind circle there and straightened their thinking out, then he told the man, said, "Now, rise and take up your pallet and go home." Otherwise, I think that human element in there, that human thinking, had to be resolved. And when the human thinking was resolved, why, this great flow of power came through, and Jesus knew that the work was done. He could see it in the man. He said, "Rise up and take up your pallet and go home." Oh, don't you wish that sometimes... Have you ever been in a place where it seemed like there was something that was blocking the way, and that you just wish you had that it took to move the block and let this free-flowing power of God flow in? Maybe we can, if we ask him to step into that mind with us. Jesus, step into this thing, this situation. Step in it, and whatever is necessary to clear the thing up, why, you come on in. And then the thing will be done somehow or another. Yeah. Otherwise, the man had to be let low in order maybe to come to the feet of Jesus where he was healed. And that's the reason I'm thinking these days, and I'd like to share it with you, that the things that you and I have labeled bad and good, evil and good, dark and light. I think it's in Psalms here where it says that if I say, "Let only darkness cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to thee. Even the darkness is not dark to thee. The night is bright as the day, for darkness is as light with thee." So you see, God doesn't pay any attention to the dark, because the dark is light with him. And so maybe my darkness is not dark at all when he is in the plan, when I let him in. So many times in the Bible, it tells us about light and darkness. I don't know, a little humor comes in here. I think there used to be, in our what we would call our covenant meetings, or our meetings where we witness to God for His goodness and whatnot. There used to be a saying as one would get up and testify as to his witness, why they would say these words. The Bible said, I know that I've passed from darkness unto the light because I love the brethren. And this particular deacon, he always said that. And so they asked him one time, said, I hear you from time to time in your testimony, why you always say I know I've passed from darkness to light because I love the brethren. And he says, why do you say that? I don't ever hear you say anything else about the sisters. He said, well, I loved them before I passed. So this whole thing of light and darkness, and it has been one of the, don't you think it's one of the scarecrows in our Christian development? That when something comes that is not light and not easy and a way that we can't see our way out, aren't we more or less, don't we rather get afraid and jittery, and we begin to cry out, oh Lord, it's dark. But in Him there is no darkness at all. For the darkness and the light are both alike to Him. And I think there's a scripture that says that they that sat in darkness saw a great light. And so, don't you like those things that cause you to seek the light, and that the darkness will turn into light? You remember that little story I tell in one of the books there about coming home after taking my girl home, about those dark woods and that old tree that was broken down. It looked awful that night, but that was in the night, and I became afraid, and I ran, I ran home. But when daylight came, I went out there and saw what it was, and it was an old tree that had blown down recently, and it had a grotesque looking way. It looked like a big monster that night, to me. But when I went out there and saw what it really was, I wasn't afraid. I could pass by there the darkest of night. I knew what it was because the light had come, and I understood. And isn't it something more or less that you and I are afraid of the things that we do not understand? So many things we are afraid of. I think there's a story that says, that goes along with that, when God first made man and God stood before man, man stood before God, and he looked up into the face of God. Why, man wasn't afraid. Said, but one time man turned around, and maybe that's the time that he maybe ate the apple, I don't know. But anyhow, when he turned around, why, the light shone and cast his shadow down on the ground, and man saw that shadow, and he began running. And man's been running ever since from shadows. And the only way to eliminate that shadow is to turn back and face God, because in Him there's no shadows, only light. Man will understand himself when he turns back to God. We run from so many things that are not real, for the only real thing is God. The only thing that is eternal, the only thing that will last is God. Yeah. So, as you and I go along in this way, and I think it has given me great, what shall I say? It has lightened, to a great extent, my thinking as far as difficulties in life as they do come to us. And even the thing that we call trial or tribulation, they are only our teachers and only testing times. Because in this particular area, in this particular quest, every now and then, we will be tested. Because, we can't say too much, we can't even get up and witness too much. And even when we say how much we love God, you just can't keep on saying that and not prove it. Because there will come a situation in your life where you have to prove it, and you look and say, well, no, I didn't mean this. Well, he said, God will tell you, say, well, this is what you asked for. He said, you loved everybody. Now, what about this particular individual here, I know I've been fronted with that many a time, in preaching, and I'm very fearful. Every time I get up to speak, even in a place like this or at home, there's a certain amount of, I don't know whether it's a nervousness or what, anyhow, you feel kind of trembly for a while. Because the things that you say, and that's one thing that you say, you've got to be pretty truthful as far as you know and your capabilities. You've got to be very sure, yes, that you believe what you say. Because many times God has put me on this spot, said, all right, it is. I remember very well one time, it is before we moved out of the church where we are now, and at that time, we were trying to buy a parsonage, and so we had raised a little money, and we thought it was time that something was being done. The parsonage that we were living in was, pretty dilapidated and whatnot, and we had been there 14 years, and we'd, excuse this word, but chinked up every little crack and hole, where the cold air would come in. We'd take paper and just seal down, and we'd paint over that, and some of it's still there. We were by there not long ago. It lasted. My wife and I, we just get together and get some of this stick-em stuff and just, and cut long strips of paper in order that we could keep warm in the wintertime. We burn out about a brand new stove in one winter, so you see how hard we had to run a stove in order to keep warm. And so we thought that we could get another parsonage to save all the way around. And so we had our regular monthly meeting, and the main thing on the agenda was the buying of the parsonage. Well, when that came to the floor, I think the opposition, I don't know whether you have any opposition in your church, but we do sometimes in ours. The opposition got up and said, well, I think we ought to wait and see about this thing. Let us investigate. Maybe a better thing will come along. Now, we'd been waiting for 14 years, The house wasn't hardly fit to live in when we went there, but here they want to wait. Well, that kind of got under my hide a little bit, I said, now listen, I don't know what you think about it. I said, but I've been living in that parsonage for 14 years, and I just think that this is a good bargain, and it's at the right price, and we ought to get it. Well, in the meantime, I saw myself getting out of hand, You ever get out of hand? Well, I found myself getting out of hand, and so I said, all right. No, here's what it was. Yeah. One of the members, and at that time it was my sister-in-law, she got up and she said, Brother Pastor, said, I think that I know we need a parsonage. And maybe this is the time to buy one. Said, but you have been telling us in our prayer group to release the thing that we want. You see? You better mind how you talk. Yeah, said you release the thing that you want and you can have it. Well, I said, that's right, Joe. Her name was Josephine. And I told God, I said, all right, God. I said, if I've lived there 14 years, maybe another year or two won't hurt. And I released it. But in the meantime, they say, well, let's pray over it. And in our next business meeting, why, we'll take it up. And so at the next business meeting, why, everybody came, opposition, and those were for, and so forth. And so we said that this is the only thing on the agenda tonight is the buying of the parsonage, and this is the final decision for a while. And I sat there and I moderated the meeting. It's the privilege of the pastor in a Baptist church to moderate the meeting. Is that good? But anyhow, and so I moderated the meeting. I said, well, we would like to hear from you in regards to the purchasing of this parsonage. And so one after another got up and said, well, Brother Pastor, we have the money in the bank, and our white friends have been very good to us. They have contributed to it, and we think that some action ought to be done. We don't want to keep the money in the bank and not do anything about it. Well, and another one said the same thing in the affirmative, and I kept on listening, for the opposition. But the opposition didn't get up at all. They were all there, but the opposition didn't get up. And after I waited so long, I didn't know what was going to happen, maybe a bombshell. But anyhow, I said, well, I will entertain a motion that the pastor and trustees be empowered to purchase this particular house, very parsonage I'm living in now. And so they got up and made the motion, seconded, and passed. And I said, all those that are for it, why, you stand up. And the whole thing stood up, opposition and all. And I said, forgive me, God, for doubting you. But the thing came about only as I released it. God, I can't do without this house, although I wanted it bad. That's one prayer that I can pray with a little success, is a prayer of release or relinquishment. I can give it. And you'll find that if you'll give it, you'll receive it. If you lose it, you'll find it. See, that's kingdom talk. You see. Just the opposite of what you think on earth, The least shall be the least down here, greatest up there. The greatest down here, least up there, see. That's where the kingdom works, just the opposite. So in this kingdom area, the things that you want, that you desire, and that are the best for you, if you release them, you can receive them. And sometimes it's through an experience that sometimes taxes the very best that is in you. It'll tax the very best that is in you. And yet it doesn't say that that you're going to get it. But always be willing to give over. If you can give over and completely release, not go back and get it. That's easy to do too. Lord, I give it to you now. If you don't do that tomorrow, we'll reach back and get it. But give it to him in the sense that, well, if I didn't ever get it, so what? Would I live on? Would I be happier or what not? Those are the things. And the thing that is coming to me in these days, and the experience that is coming to me, that all of these things that used to that would frighten me because of the implications. Well, I know now that out of that will come light. Because you and I are here to learn lessons. What is, who is going to be our teacher if it's not experience? If it's not the so-called bad or so-called evil? So we are learners. And as we grow into this, we will find that that as we grow into this, there will be certain areas at different times that we will find ourselves being moved into. Certain areas from time to time. I think it's very, it demonstrates itself very, very good over here. I don't know, I like to think of it in this way anyhow. Well, shall we say in the 5th chapter of Matthew. I want you to look at this in the perspective of being here and moving over into here. Seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him. Now, see, this is one of the things that I think is very pertinent here, that sometimes as you and I read that, when it says the crowds, we think that he said these things, these particular beatitudes anyhow, to the crowds, but he didn't. He said his disciples came to him. Those that were very close around him. Because to me, we are constantly working towards being in that inner circle with Jesus. Where it says, the mysteries of the kingdom can be explained. It says, it's given to you. I talk to the crowds on the hill in parables, but unto you who are near me, unto you who go around with me all the time and are very close to me, it is given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom. And so, to me here, I'm so glad that the Bible is so written. It is divinely written, and I'm convinced of it more and more every day, because it speaks to man on every level of his spiritual growth. You see, regardless of where you are in your spiritual growth and development, it speaks to you. And it'll be speaking to man, I suppose, 1,000 years from today, it'll be speaking to him, but maybe on a different level. Because I like that. I don't know what kind of a saying it is, but it says that the Bible is written so that a child can swim in it and a child can wade in it. It's shallow enough for a child to wade in and deep enough for an elephant to swim. So at all levels of man's spiritual growth, the Bible speaks to you. And that's the reason I've had to, shall I say, put up on the shelf some of the, the theology that they pumped down me a little bit. I had put up on the shelf because I know that now anyone can go into God himself and can find the answer for himself at the level of his growth and development. And God will speak to you. Blessed are the poor in spirit. All right, maybe we are there now. What's going to happen to them? They'll move into. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You see where you move into? From the poor in spirit into the kingdom of heaven. You see, it's a constant fluctuation there. Blessed are those who mourn. Those that mourn, they will not always mourn, but they will be moved into another category. Well, they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. I think all of us have that hunger, don't we? Hunger and thirsting for righteousness. And isn't it, rather a wonderful anticipation to know that this hunger and thirst of yours and mine will someday be satisfied? It must be. I think I told a story down to Washington, New York, one, I don't know which it was. But anyhow, that even in the vegetable kingdom, God takes care. Well, shall I say desires? I don't know whether a plant has desires or not, but the needs, I would say. Even the needs of the vegetable. I don't know whether they can talk or not. But I do think that they have needs, and let me say they do have desires. Because as you see every plant as it comes up, it seems like it's reaching up and maybe asking. As I told this story when we went to California, we happened to, I don't know whether we got off the road or not, but anyhow, we happened to go through some parts of Arizona where these great fields of cacti were. These tall ones, you know, they got these things on them and everything like that, and how dry it was. I don't know, we had to rather roll up the windows because of the dust and alkali, I don't know, something like that. But anyhow, we went on through there, but as we went through, we saw these great cacti, you know, and some of them were green, and the dirt was so dry, you wonder where was it getting its life from, you know. And after we got through that part of the country, we stopped at a filling station, and we were talking to the man who attended the filling station, and he said, I said, when have you had a rain here? I said, it's awful dry. He said, 3 or 4 months since we've had rains that's real hot like this for a long time. I said, well, how come these cacti can grow in this hot, I said, the ground is dry as all get out. He said, well, maybe you don't know much about cacti, and I didn't. And he said, well, they don't, so they're getting along all right. So this is a natural thing for them. He says, you'll find that inside of them is water, liquid. And said if you had to notice real close, and which I had noticed, but I didn't think, birds had pecked a hole in it, you know. Birds know that there's water inside that cacti. I said, I wonder where how does the water come? Wasn't it in the ground? But somehow or another, because of the need of that cacti, the God that made it supplied from something up there the moisture that the cacti needed. Otherwise, I like to think of that cacti with its arms up saying, I need water. I need water. And God, each night maybe, would set in motion the machinery, the heavenly machinery, the natural machinery, to distill out of the air the moisture that the cacti needed. And the cacti lived because the God that created it took care of it. And I think how many times that there, when our spiritual life is dry, everything around us dry, doesn't God love us? as much as he does the cacti. If he takes care of the needs of the cacti, why won't he take care of the needs of me, you? I'm sure that he will. I'm sure that he does. Yeah. And, while we are speaking of this dryness, now that's one thing I find that in this whole scheme of things, you will find, and I find that people get excited just about this time in their spiritual growth. They get very alarmed, I would say, not so much excited, but get very much alarmed because of this dry place, this desert place that you come across in your spiritual development. This dry place where it seems, well, you've gone through all of the exercises like you used to meditate. Well, you don't feel anything. You don't get that joy that you used to get. And you'll go on and on. The songs that you used to sing, they're just flat. They don't give you the joy or the exhilaration that you used to get. And many people become alarmed to the extent that they think that they have done something, and God has withdrawn his Spirit from them. And if it's kept up, they will develop a guilt complex, which is really bad. And they search themselves and said, what is it that I've done? And they live under that dark cloud of guilt, not knowing what is really happening. You will get to that place, so don't be alarmed at it. Because God, if he knows you at all, and if he knows even the number of hairs in your head, and it doesn't take him long to count mine, why, surely he knows about you, and whose body is his spirit. How can he forget that part of him in you? Even if you don't hear him, you don't feel like you used to. Why, he knows about that part of you in him. I'd like to turn to, what is it now? I think it's Job. Job 23:10. I think it's a very, very fine thing. When you get into that particular shape, why, you turn to the 23rd chapter of Job and about the 8th verse. You see, Job went through that same experience, that dry experience. I think years ago, I think Georgia Harkness wrote a book, said something about, called it The Dark Night of the Soul, but anyhow, well, it's the same thing. And Job says here in his dry place, say, behold, I go forward, but he is not there, and backward, but I cannot perceive him. On the left hand I seek him, but I cannot behold him. I turn to the right hand, but I cannot see him. But, listen at this assurance. He knows the way that I take. And when he has tried me, he's trying you, I shall come forth as gold. You see, that's the glory of it. That there never will come a time, regardless of where you are or where you will ever be, that God will not be mindful of you wherever you are. Because I think every one of us deep down within ourselves, when we know that, when we know God, that God regardless if I can't hear you, if I can't see you, if I can't feel you, if I can't hear your voice, I know you know the way that I take. But where could you go that he could not follow your path? Where could you go in the whole universe that you could not follow his path? I think the psalmist says, if I take the wings of the morning and fly to the utmost parts of the earth, lo, he's there. When you send a man, when we send these men orbiting around the earth, all they would have to do is to tune in. He'd be there. They can't go so fast that he's not there. And the beautiful thing about it is that a man cannot sink so low that this great power of God is not able to get right down there where he is and rescue him. Even when I make my bed in hell, you make your bed. You're not laying on it yet, but you make your bed in hell. He says, lo, he is there. You see, so often when we try to serve people, if we can get right there where they are, down in their hell, then we are able to sometimes help them out of that. That's the reason that God can come in. That's the reason that Christ can come in and rescue us out of those kind of situations. Because he is there. His arms are so long until he can reach down and up and around and include all. These are the things that God can do for you and for me. So the thing that I'm trying to do, I'm trying to dispel darkness. As far as darkness as you and I have thought of it, out of our minds as Christians and as seekers for more of God. Because in the very so-called darkness there is light. And God is always trying to show us something in the so-called darkness. I go back to my boyhood again because being raised in a little small town, population 1,096, and well, last time I left there, I don't know whether it has grown any since then. But I remember the old house of ours, right on the edge of the branch. That's Kentucky language. You call it creek, whatnot. I remember the old house, and right across the bridge was our house. We had a well right out of the kitchen door, where I, as a boy, and other kids as children, we drew our water from this well. It was a deep old well, had a top on it. And from time to time, my mother used to warn me against, especially at night, to not draw any water. The very thing that you tell kids not to do, why, that's kind of a dare, They are going to do it at one time or another. So one night I thought that I would try it out, and because the well was deep, even in the daytime, you'd have to look way down, and then you would see the sparkling of the water down there. But one night as I was all fooling around, looking around and whatnot, I was a glad fella on a good night, I like to look at the stars. I used to name them, what we kids named them, what the older people had told us they were. There was one set of stars, the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, Oh, the Milky Way, and what is that other one? We used to have one. I can't find it anymore. Job's Coffin, they called it. I don't know. Maybe you've never heard of that one, but anyhow, well, there used to be one up there. It's supposed to be Job's Coffin. And you look around, and so I don't know. I just thought I would just peek in there in the well to see if there, if anything would jump out there after me, or how scared, how frightening it was to look in a well at night. And so I lifted back the top and I looked down in there. And it happened the moon was just above, right up above, and when I looked down in there, that beautiful moon was shining down in the bottom of that well. And as I think of it now, the thing that I thought was so dark, when the top is open, a light will shine in. As I looked down there, I also not only saw the reflection of the moon, but looking a little further, I saw the reflection of myself. Light shining in my darkness. And what would happen in all of our difficulties, which we call dark and what? If we could open up the windows or the top of our soul, our very being, when we think it's dark, and let his light shine in. For the people that sat in darkness have seen a great light. That thrills me when I say that. Because I know that under any situation, any circumstance, any difficult condition that would happen in my life, if I can just but open and let him, all light, all darkness will be dispelled. And the thing that I thought was dark will become light. And I'm trying to get it deep down into my subconsciousness. That all I have to, in all situations, that as far as God is concerned, and God and me is concerned, the darkness and the light are both alike to him. If I can get that across, to myself, the journey will be much easier, and my load will be lighter.